Hi Pisces, welcome to your reading. This is going to be your eclipse geoscope for the upcoming lunar eclipse in Capricorn, which happens on the 5th of July 2020. So this eclipse basically is going to be the twin to the solar eclipse in Cancer we had in June, on the 21st of June. So really these two should be seen as a pair, and generally speaking the solar eclipse brings in fresh energy which will last for approximately 6 months, and the Capricorn or the lunar eclipse that follows is normally a kind of clearing out or a culmination or closing off of energies that of things that we've been dealing with potentially for the last 2 years or so, while we've had the series of eclipses in Cancer and Capricorn, because this is going to be the last one in the series before we move fully into the new Saros cycle, which is going to be Gemini and Sagittarius eclipses. So anyway, let's get into your reading and find out what's going on for you. See what the elementals want to highlight for you at this time. So just to say that I have done some video forecasts for the upcoming 6-month cycle for each of the 12 zodiac signs. So if that's something that you are interested in watching, then do go to my website and subscribe to my newsletter, because that will give you access to the eclipse horoscopes that I've done for the this period of eclipses. And of course it will be valid for the next 6 months, so there's no chance of missing out. Right, I think that's a good shuffle. Let's cut the cards. Let's find out what's going on. Wow, Pisces, this is amazing. So your reading starts off with Fortuna Major. Now this is the Sun in Leo. It's a really sunny, upbeat, optimistic energy. It's very expansive. It's almost kind of rewards for work well done, or sort of good karma basically coming back to you now. So as I say, I do think this is a closing out of an 18 months to 2 year cycle that we've all been kind of going through, in which many of us have been working on karmic issues, because of course Saturn and Capricorn are both signs really kind of associated with the sort of hard work, the sort of I don't want to say suffering, but certainly it's kind of that no pain no gain kind of energy. So it looks as though whatever has happened in the last 2 years, however many sacrifices you've made, whatever you've suffered, you're now kind of looking forward to a bit of good fortune, particularly as the Sun moves into Leo season, which of course will happen later in July. Interesting. So in the 4th house, we've got Capricorn. Now, this is the head of the dragon, so it's the North Node in astrological speak. And basically, this is the geomantic figure that is most associated with beginnings. So this is usually a new karmic cycle beginning. Now, it's interesting because we are dealing with a lunar eclipse here, which is normally to do with endings. So on some level, you are beginning a new cycle when it comes to home, family, roots, lineage, as well as where you live. So maybe you're thinking of relocating. Perhaps you are considering that maybe it's time to buy a new house. Maybe the property that you live in currently is not suitable for your needs and you're wanting to sort of upsize, downsize, something like that. But there's definitely a new cycle starting for you when it comes to home and family. Interesting. So this is your 7th house of significant partnerships and interpersonal kind of one-to-one relationships. And here we've got Albus. Now Albus is the kind of polar opposite to Rubeus. So this is white, whereas Rubeus is red. So Rubeus is red for passion and Albus is white for reason. This is Mercury in Gemini energy. So it's quite intellectual, it's quite cerebral. It's quite detached energy. So it's almost like going into hermit mode. So it looks as though when it comes to significant relationships, and this is usually committed partnerships as well as long-term business partnerships, you seem to be kind of withdrawing a little bit. going into hermit mode, maybe spending some time on your own or wanting to spend time on your own. Maybe there's some things that you're kind of thinking through. The interesting thing, though, is that it does have overlaps with Caput Draconis in the sense that Albus can sometimes be represented by a blank sheet of paper. So it's almost as though you're starting fresh. You're kind of wanting to clear the slate and start again. Now, it could be that you and a committed partner are either clearing the slate, so you're kind of kissing and making up and you want to sort of start your relationship over again, or it could be that perhaps you are getting divorced and these are divorce papers and you're kind of wiping the slate clean, as in you sort of this relationship has now come to an end and you are kind of moving on. The other thing I should say about this, of course, is that Mercury is retrograde as we do this reading. So Mercury will be retrograde until around about the 12th of July. So that may also be significant. It may be that there's sort of unfinished business, contracts, negotiations, conversations that need to be had between now and then to kind of wrap this energy up. Then we move on to Tristia. Now, interesting, because last time I did reading for you, we had Tristia in your 4th house. So this is now moved up to your 10th house. So this is Saturn in Aquarius energy. So it's air energy, but it's kind of fixed air. So generally speaking, the geomantic figure is about dealing with loss, dealing with grief, dealing with disappointment. So, perhaps on some level you are deciding that the direction of travel that you've been heading in up till now, perhaps over the last 2 years or so, needs to change, and you're kind of realizing that either that particular career path isn't really for you, or you've had some kind of disappointment when it comes to work or career, and you're kind of working through it. But I think what is significant possibly is Saturn's tour through Aquarius. Now, at the moment, when we have this eclipse, Saturn would have just regressed back into the sign of Capricorn, where it's been for approximately 2 years. So it could be that there's some kind of delay, or and in that sense, this is where the sort of disappointment kind of comes in, is that, Saturn at the moment is going to be in Capricorn until around about December. So it may be that things have kind of stalled for you when it comes to career, but they will pick up again once Saturn re-enters the sign of Aquarius. There are other ways of reading this, of course, but I think what we should do is first get the rest of the geomantic figures to have a bit of a closer look at what's kind of going on. So I'm just going to pause the video while I quickly do those conversions, and I'll be back with you shortly. Hi Pisces, welcome back. So just to say that if you've watched this video already, I have actually redone this section because I realized that it's Mercury retrograde, and I'd made a few mistakes with the conversion. So I do apologize about that. But let's get down to your correct reading and see what is in store for you. So I think beginning here in your 5th house, if we take a step back and we go back to the solstice solar eclipse that happened in June, this started a new cycle for you in your 5th house. So the 5th house is about lovers, new relationships, and new romantic relationships. It's also about new creative projects or endeavors, or just how we express our creativity and joy and passion, as well as children or kind of childhood. And then in addition, it can be things like the leisure industry, it can be sport, and it can also be holidays. So basically whatever brings you joy, passion, or allows you to express yourself. This is the natural house of the sun. So it's all about that kind of childlike play and self-expression that Leo is so kind of well known for. Very creative sign. So this is where things were kind of starting for you. And so with the lunar eclipse, we get the counterbalancing energy kind of coming in with the in that opposite sign or house. So the emphasis of the lunar eclipse is on Capricorn. So we had this new start in Cancer, and now this is the kind of counterbalance in Capricorn. And very often what this is asking us to do is to either balance out the energies to make sure that, you know, where one thing is starting, there needs to be perhaps something that's ending or kind of coming to fruition, which then may feed into this, or what we need to kind of let go of. And so generally speaking, full moons tend to be either about what is becoming illuminated and clear, because of course the moon is completely illuminated by the sun. And at a lunar eclipse, this can be obscured a little bit or kind of shadowed by the proximity of the Earth in the middle. So I think the way to see a lunar eclipse is drawing your attention to what you may not have been consciously aware of, that may potentially hinder your progress, block progress, perhaps unconsciously, or that might be where you need to kind of grow a little bit or sort of develop muscles, you know. But generally speaking, it's about catharsis, release, and, you know, a kind of and closure. That's the other important thing. So the moon will be here in your 11th house, which is the house of groups, friendships, community, as well as any associations that we belong to, in terms of fellowships where we share ideals. So this can be social media, it can be a club, group, society, a political movement, anything that helps us to combine efforts with other people in order to do something that is often greater than ourselves. So this is more about self-expression and creating works that reflect our inner creativity and our inner personality. And the 11th house is more about doing good works and creating change for the collective. So it's about having a kind of higher purpose, or, you know, kind of that sense of something that's greater than yourself and greater than the sum of the parts too. That's the other thing. So with the moon here, I kind of feel as though whatever is starting for you in the 5th house, you want to have being reflected in the greater community. And I feel as though, in other words, if you're kind of doing something creative, for example, you want this to be something that has greater significance in terms of society. You want it to either have a message that either helps society, reflects back to society certain trends or you know, blind spots, or it can sometimes be about just wanting your works or your passion to have a greater impact. So you could, for example, you know, if you think about children, for example, you don't just have children because you fancy dressing up a baby in doll's clothing. You have a child as a kind of arrow that you shoot into the future. So you want them to sort of be, to stand on your shoulders and to be bigger than you, to have their own future, to make an impact perhaps in a way that is different to you, but that is an extension of your legacy. So I think that's a really good way to actually see the 11th and 5th house axis. By the same token, you know, we did talk a lot in your last reading about potentially new relationships, because this can be the start of new romance. And I kind of think that, you know, in that case, there may be a link to your 11th house, in the sense that it could be not necessarily that this person is entirely new to you, but perhaps it's a friend that you're looking at in a new way, or it's somebody that you already know, because with lunar eclipses and with full moon energy, there is this link to the past. So it could well be that you start to see somebody in a new light. And the reason that I say that is because here in your 3rd house, you're going to be having a trine that's going to happen between the moon in Capricorn and Uranus, which is going to be in Taurus. And this is your house that Taurus rules. So this is you, Pisces, and then we've got the house of Aries, and we've got the house of Taurus. So here we've got passion. This is Rubeus, and it's about passion. Now, Rubeus, you know, it's considered to be a neutral figure, but it can lean towards the negative if it gets out of control. But here, in relation to the 11th, things could go either way. So it could be that suddenly you have a kind of mental perception, which is third house, or a message that makes you see a friend in a different light. Because this is Uranus, which tends to bring about perception shift or changes, sometimes sudden or unexpected. So it could be that you unexpectedly realize that you feel quite passionate about a friend or someone in your social network, or someone in your community, or somebody that you might know through a group affiliation, or something of that ilk. Or it could be that you realize that perhaps this person comes towards you, because Puer is quite active, pursuing night kind of energy. This is Mars in Aries, and it's interesting because Mars will have just ingressed into Aries a couple of days before this particular lunar eclipse, so that energy will be quite fresh. So Mars has now moved out of your sign, where perhaps it's been causing quite a bit of irritation, agitation, restless sleep, feelings of anger kind of bubbling up from the surface that you didn't know were there, inflammation, possibly of some kind in the body. And now it's kind of transferring to your emotions, which are focused on your 11th house. So it could be that a friend suddenly sends you a passionate message, which kind of sets something off in you, and you kind of realize, oh gosh, Uranus is drawing my attention. Maybe Uranus is changing your mind about a friend, and there's some potential kind of pash going on here. A new flame, a new old flame. That's one way that this could work. Or you realize, with Uranus making a trine to the moon, you realize that you see a male friend, for example, in a new light, and are feeling quite drawn and attracted to them, because this is Mars in Scorpio. So we've got Mars in Aries here, Mars in Scorpio, and so you feel that you want to kind of pursue them. And this actually fits quite well with the conjunction that the moon is making to the fixed star Vega, which is part of the constellation of Lyra, and that is the harp of Orpheus, the lyre of Orpheus. And Orpheus is, of course, the magician slash musician, the kind of shaman healer figure, who is able to seduce through his music. So there's this definite sort of air here of potential seduction kind of going on between these three areas of your chart. And of course, if that's not the case, then it may be that you are having a passion, a kind of a creative passion being ignited through a shift in perception, which makes you see how you can use this creativity for a kind of larger purpose, in other words, to carry a social message, or to kind of ignite people's hearts and minds in a way that makes them perceive things differently. That's the other way that this energy can work. But definitely, if this is romance, it's interesting because we do have Rubeus again in your 9th house. So again, this could work in one of two ways. It could be that this person lives at a distance from you, so they could either be foreign, of a foreign extraction, so a different culture to you, perhaps a different language, or it could be that they live in a different country to you. That's one way that this energy could work. Or if it's a creative pursuit, it could be that it not only involves a perception shift, but also a shift in beliefs. In other words, you're kind of being almost lit up by something that is not just intellectually inspiring, but is divinely inspired, which kind of sets your creativity on fire and makes you want to sort of put it out there, kind of thing. So yes, that's kind of one of the two areas or ways that this energy could work. But there is a very clear sense here that whatever you are kind of closing out or kind of culminating or realizing does have a social dimension, because we've got populace as the outcome of your reading, and that is all about community, communing with others in groups. So it can be, something that's got a social message, as I say. It could be something that comes out of your community or your tribe or people that you kind of associate with. This energy can work both ways, kind of either coming in or going out. But clearly, this is about a new cycle for you. So it's really emphasizing the new cycle that started for you at the solstice solar eclipse, which is kind of fifth house energy. But in order to sort of have this energy work for you, there needs to be a clearing out. And here the clue to this is Cauda Draconis, the south node, which we find in the 8th house. So the 8th house is shared possessions or resources. So these can be material resources such as assets. So it can be money, finances, loans, inheritances on one hand, or it can be more ephemeral types of resources such as sex, trust, kind of equal effort. So this is about kind of equal give and take between you and another party. It could be a contract that maybe needs to be torn up because it's not really fair to both parties. One person's got more rights than the other. So this seems to be the area where things need to be evened out a little bit more, or something needs to be let go of in order for this energy to balance out and kind of flow. This will probably have a connection to what happened back in either January or December of 2019, because the moon will be at the same degree as the solar eclipse in Capricorn that happened certainly in January of 2019. So it may be that this is kind of the finishing up of a situation, or the next step in the process that began around about that time. Or it could have to do with the last set of eclipses that we had, starting with the solar eclipse in Capricorn that was in December of 2019, which then took us into the first half of 2020. So one of the two things. But it is interesting that we've got Albus in your 7th house, and very often these two houses are connected. So this is our one-to-one relationships with others, and this is often what we share with that significant other. And here we've got Albus. Now Albus, as I said at the beginning of the reading, is about blank sheets of paper. So it can be about contracts potentially, and these can be written, or they could be verbal. Mercury in Gemini is both. It could be that there's a dual element to this relationship, because we've got Mercury here in Gemini, which has this kind of dual quality to it. And of course, Venus is still traveling through Gemini and will be until around about August. So it could be that on some level there is a dual aspect to this. But Albus is much more detached. It's actually the counterpoint to Rubeus. So on some level, relationships for you have been anything but passionate. They've been the opposite. It's like something has gone cold. So perhaps you've walked away from a significant partnership, a marriage, or a long-term financial arrangement, and the slate is being sort of swept clean, and this is why we've got this sort of new passion potentially coming in. That's one way that this energy could work. Or it could be that you are not feeling too enthusiastic about whatever this arrangement is, and you want to sort of write a new one, in the sense that you've realized, with a little bit of detachment and using the more logical side of your thought process, that perhaps when you initially agreed to this arrangement, you didn't really, maybe you were caught off guard, maybe things were portrayed in a not very clear light, or perhaps you were skewed a little bit by your emotions, and now you're seeing things in the cold light of day, and you realize, oh no, this isn't really in my best interest. Maybe it's time for renegotiation, kind of thing. So I think this is the area where, if there is going to be any sort of blind spot or shadow that the earth is sort of casting onto the moon, then it's going to have something to do with the 8th house. And so the 8th house is secrets, sex, death, taxes. It can be vices, insecurities. As I say, it can also be about shared resources. You and one other party. Things that aren't discussed so much. Intimacy, we don't talk about. Sex, we don't really like to talk about. Death, we don't like to talk about. So it's all those kind of unsaid, unspoken, sometimes contracts that perhaps need to be addressed, in order for this to flow more. And then if we have a look at Populus again, we see that it is reflected in your 2nd house. And so that tells me that whatever the outcome, ultimately, of this particular solar lunar cycle, which lasts about 2 weeks, it certainly has the potential to change either your income or your sense of self-worth, because this is about value. The 2nd house is about value. So it's about how we value ourselves, our skills, what we have to offer, as well as how we value our labor, and how other people value our labor in terms of what they pay us. And of course, that is open to negotiation, which is why the 2nd and the 8th house are connected. So I think that if this is a new creative project that you feel passionate about, then perhaps what you're doing is you're taking it to the people. So maybe crowdfunding is one way to realize this dream, to take it from the personal sphere into this sort of social sphere. Or it could be that you perhaps, in order to renegotiate this contract, you are looking on, say, online for the most commonly held ways of doing things, what's considered fair from a kind of natural justice point of view, or the sort of like a template. For example, you may be looking for a template of a sort of what's the word I'm looking for? Almost like a kind of standard way of doing things that you can then use as a model in order to sort of renegotiate in this particular area. Or it can simply be about accepted forms of wisdom, traditional forms of wisdom. What would most people say is fair, just, good value, or the right way to go? So in other words, not feeling that you have to reinvent the wheel here. You can look online to see what the going rate is for something. You can look online for a kind of standard, there's a word that I'm looking for that is eluding me at the moment. That kind of prototype contract or arrangement, or the tried and tested way to go. So, for example, if you want to sort of do crowdfunding, you might be looking at, well, how have other people done it, and actually doing a little bit of research and then following that formula almost for success. If it is a romantic relationship, then I kind of think that perhaps this is about either looking maybe online for advice, or asking your friends perhaps what they think, or it could be kind of saying, what would other people advise me? Like, what would be the sort of standard way to go here? What have a lot of people been telling me about my value, or what is the kind of common message? You know, in other words, taking the sort of the generally accepted or the commonly recurring message or theme or sign, and kind of working with it, rather than feeling that you have to be entirely different. And I'm not really kind of making sense here, but this is group, so you know, it could be again that it's saying, well, you know, you've already met the person, you've met the soulmate that you're looking for, and this person exists within your group. Could be saying that, but you're just not valuing them in the right way. You're not seeing them in that light, or they are not seeing you in that light. So that could be how this energy works. But ultimately, there is this pivoting happening because of Uranus. So one way or another, there is a perception shift, either through a message coming in or you having a realization, and perhaps, you know, kind of expressing either through creativity or perhaps through direct contact or online contact, something of that ilk. But the outcome is new starts, so it's pointing you back to that solstice eclipse energy. So I would, if you haven't already, I would go back and have a look at that geoscope that I did for the solar eclipse in Cancer, and also perhaps check out the horoscope I did, the video horoscope that I did for Pisces, which is on my website, and that you can access if you subscribe, which is free. So you just go to the membership area and then check out the link that I've got there for the 6-month horoscopes. But definitely the emphasis for you is on welcoming in success. So this is about you pivoting, seeing yourself, seeing the future in a more positive light, seeing that you can, you know, you can do this. Your health is improving, your mindset is improving, your body's improving. You seeing that success is possible for yourself, rather than you know, perhaps the old storyline, which might have been a bit more negative, and it might have also been tied to the imbalance in give and take, or this sort of loveless relationship that you were sort of caught in for so long. But really your passion has been ignited in a big way at this particular eclipse, and I think it's going to allow you to really release the past, get the balance back between give and take, release yourself from any kind of bondage in terms of addictions, secrets. You know, if someone's trying to sort of hold something over you, really freeing yourself of that energy, coming more into alignment with your soul tribe, feeling as though you're part of a bigger community, having a greater purpose, and that will kind of drive you forward into that new energy. So I hope that's been a lot clearer, and apologies again for my Mercury retrograde moment. But I hope this has been helpful. Do leave me a comment in the box below if this has resonated, and if you're enjoying these videos, then do subscribe, because I plan to do them for every lunar phase kind of going forward. But in the meantime, until our next forecast, which will be at the new moon, I think it's in Leo, I'm wishing you all the best, and lots of full moon blessings.